Welcome to the NSTHA Forum, Ask the Chief, number 41. And as per the last forum, we're going to be doing the Wheel of Questions with audience participation. How much fun is that? Okay, we're going to get started with question one. Well, in other words, first question. I guess I should say spin the wheel. All right.
Number one.
Question number one. Who has question number one?
I do, sire. It says,
Okay.
could you please break down passive aggressive behavior?
Oh, well, that one. Passive aggressive behavior. Well, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. So passive aggressive behavior, it's not a bad question because some people don't really know what it is. When I grew up, people were just straightforward, primarily family units. So I didn't really know what passive aggressive behavior was. And when I ran into it, I didn't quite understand it. So generally, just to give a little bit of a description from my experience with it, is that someone would ask me, for instance, would I like to take a trip to or to drive to Detroit from New York? And I have a lot of work to do. And so I said, no, I can't make it. I have too much work to do. So the passive aggressive part would be them saying, well, everyone would really like to see you in Detroit. And for me, that, was just like, I just said, I can't, I'm not going. But they try to find a way around to try to guilt you into doing what they want you to do. And that's my experience with passive aggressive, being passive aggressiveness or passive aggressiveness. So it takes on various forms. There are some who, parental units will use it against their kids. So usually, if you're not a kid anymore, you're a young adult, you may be out on your own or something like that. And for instance, a mother unit or father unit wants you to do something for them that's pretty inconvenient for you at that time. So, I have my own life, I have my own stuff to do. So, can you come over and hang some pictures for me? I said, well, I can't come over today, but I might be able to come over, on the weekend or something like that. Or my schedule's so busy, I don't know when I'll be able to come. I've known that some mother units will say, well, I carried you for 9 months and this, you can't do this for me, it's basically trying to guilt someone into doing what they want you to do. So if you're someone who's kind of sensitive, which they would consider to be a light touch is a term, they would consider to be a light touch, then you might find yourself manipulated into doing what they want you to do, but you're really not very happy about it the whole time you're doing it. And people tend to be pretty selfish, to tell you, and self-centered. They don't care if it inconveniences you, as long as they get what they want out of you. So it's not just family units, relationships or whatever. It can be nationalism. Just anyone can use that depending on what the situation is. If they can sense, generally parental units use that on you. They use it on you because it's worked in the past. But they don't understand that if they're using it to manipulate you, it might be a trigger or coding that they're installing in you that others can use against you. Because there are people who are able to sense, if someone is, as I say, a soft touch or not. So literally, that's how it works. is based on selfishness, really. Narcissists are pretty big on using that tactic because it's all about them. It's all about what they want. I don't care if it's inconveniencing you. Give me what I want. Okay, so whoever sent that question in, hopefully that's that covers it well enough for now. Okay, so we can move on to the next question and spin the wheel.
Coming.
Come on, wheel.
Two. Question two.
Oh, who has question two?
I have question two.
Oh, okay, let's go.
So that would be, I have been noticing more dense and illogical behavior. Is that part of the journey of becoming more aware of the matrix, or is there an increase in dense behavior?
I would say that's an increase of dense behavior, but also that dense behavior is because the amount of frequency that is rising in the world. So as far as like, a lot of confusion, in other words, it's like, for instance, they used to have a commercial years ago having to do with these contraptions that will basically make a certain sound or frequency that you may not be able to hear, but certain insects can hear. So they would have a glass container or like an aquarium, and they'd have these cockroaches in there, and they would turn the unit on, and the cockroaches are just meandering around like bugs do. But when they would change the frequency, the bugs would start to get irritated and erratic in their movements. So the higher they turn the frequency, the more erratic the insects would move. They're just, in other words, they're just bumping into walls. They're just, all of a sudden they can't focus on anything. They can't think as far as like, okay, if I come to this point, I'm going to make a right, or I'm going to not run head first into this wall. I'll just stop and then I'll go back the other way or whatever they were doing while they're in the container. So it's a similar thing that's going on with the frequency on the planet. Those that the media decided that they don't want to pay as much attention to as before because it scares them, and they're afraid that if they basically air this stuff on regular news or whatever, or on what people might be watching on the regular, even like platforms like YouTube. I don't know if TikTok is doing it, but I believe that YouTube has changed its what we call it. Literally, damn, I had it in my mind a few seconds ago. But anyway, in other words, to push or basically promote your video, if your video is about something that they're not really interested in promoting, the algorithms, they'll change the algorithms so that not as many people are going to be able to see what you are airing on their platform. So for instance, I do a lot of SLS stuff. Maybe a year or two ago, when it was kind of new to them, I guess. I mean, it's been around a while, but there were people making SLS videos. They, you would see some of this stuff, and it would just kind of pop up on our, on our feed. Nowadays, none of it pops up. And there are other individuals other than myself who are doing SLS videos. It's because literally they can't really debunk it. So something that they have a hard time debunking, they won't promote. They'll mess with the algorithms. And I even talked to ChatGPT about that one. I said, can they, mess around with your algorithms? He said, yeah, they'll mess around with your algorithms. But then they said, well, they have various reasons for messing with it, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, it has to do with you doing something that the system is afraid of, and they don't like what's been going on for at least 5 years now in an intense way is something that they can't wrap their hands around. They can't wrap their minds around. They can't understand why they can't control that, why they can't control the anomalies, because the anomalies no longer belong to them. For instance, the UFOs, or what they call UAPs now, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and so on and so forth, those were part of the dense realm. They're part of a story. There were times, if people would see them, they weren't wanting them to see them, but they're not the most, density is not the most efficient. They talk a lot of trash about you can't beat the system or so on and so forth. But the reality of the matter is that if your mind is in the right place, you can override whatever the system is throwing your way. You can even go into their system and manipulate how things go around you. Takes a lot of work, takes a certain amount of knowledge, and I would say most people don't have that knowledge. Anyone who's out there and they're bending spoons and whatever kind of stuff that they're doing, these like parlor tricks, I call them, they're backed by the system. They get promoted. Anything that you see where someone is a major shaman and he's in the news or she's in the news or whatever, a lot of times, if not all the time, they're backed. I would say all the time, they're backed by the system. Just as these platforms can mess with your algorithms so that people can't see your stuff, even if your stuff is interesting. They'll do the same if someone is getting a little too close to the tree. So you're not going to get promoted by them. You're not going to, and it's like, I think if you've ever played sports on any teams where there's all this competition and competition within the team, if you were played in kids sports or anything like that, you can get very political. Parents want their kid to be the lead in whatever the game is, soccer, baseball, basketball, whatever. And depending on how close that parent is to the coach, their kid might get more preferential treatment than your kid, who may be as talented or maybe a little bit more talented. Now, if your kid is extremely talented, they don't care because, well, that kid's got some juice. Sorry, but that kid's going to give me a name. I'm going to ride this kid into fame and fortune. But if they're on the same level and not too much difference, the kid whose parent is, has a relationship with the coach, maybe friends or something like that, their kid will get more preferential treatment. So literally, going from how saying that the frequency is affecting the people who are, literally from that, I'm talking about, how they experiment with bugs and so on and so forth. Literally, it's all wrapped up in the similar thing. It's all wrapped up in the same thing. But what you're experiencing, and even sometimes you might experience some lack of clarity yourself from time to time. If you're doing what I instruct you to do as a member, you have less trouble with that. But you may find yourself noticing others. And so, but the question is, that have something to do with your journey. Yeah, if you can observe and not be affected as much as the people you're observing, yeah, it means that you're definitely on the journey, means that you're actually following the exercises that I give you and the containment that I give you, utilizing the energy that I give you in the proper way. So with that, I think we'll move on to the next question, the third question. Okay, ready? Spin the wheel. Okay.
Question 8. So my question, what is it about the moon that causes the tides to rise and fall?
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, there's various theories having to do with the moon causing the tides to rise and fall. The idea that the moon does affect the tides. You know, there are tide schedules that they have, and I think even since the frequency has been rising over the last 5 years, that I think there's been some changes in those the title schedules. Something has basically changed. Now, what I understand from my interaction with those on the other side that I share and I get information from, who share information with me, not only do they say that the sun is no longer what, in other words, it's not the sun that you remember or that your parents remember and so on and so forth. Also, the moon has been changed as well. They said it's an image of the moon more so than the actual moon. Some even go as far as saying it's the illusion of the moon, other than instead of the actual moon. And there are videos that I have an ability to suss out as to whether they're fake or not. And there are actual videos of the moon in the sky being humongous. Now, the size of the moon can change throughout the year naturally, but they're saying the size is beyond that. At times they see it, and then the next night, maybe normal size. There are actual videos, images of two moons, four moons. Even with the sun, there are images of two, three suns sometimes, and sometimes one sun is larger than the other. So there's the same thing that's going on with, in other words, what people are seeing happening with the moon. And I don't think that's by accident that people are seeing that. I do believe that light beings are actually behind that because it literally messes with how your density controls you. So if density tells you they know everything there's to know about how the moon rotates around the sun and around the planet, most people believe it because they're programmed to believe it. Me, I questioned everything, even since I was a little kid. I said, how do they know all this stuff? We know because geometry, math, and all this stuff, and we configure and da. But in reality, they could be lying to you. How do you know if they know what they're talking about? How do you know that they don't know what they're talking about? It's like faith. And it's really kind of funny because we have this very schizophrenic relationship with the system. So there are individuals like the system lies to you and so on and so forth. But if they punch the right button, something that might raise their hackles or activate their fear, all of a sudden they believe what the system tells them. Sometimes people just basically repeat what the system tells them because they want to impress others. And after all, the system is the last word. Scientists are the last word. And in reality, scientists are always just, and I think I've talked about this maybe even in the last forum, scientists are always guessing about stuff. They say, educated guess. And we looked at it a long time. We have an educated guess. Well, let's say your education is that of a preschooler. So a preschooler can, look at something and stare at it, and then it moves a little bit or something like that. And then they go to their friends. I think I know everything there is to know about ants because I saw them go in and out of a hole. All this stuff that they're saying, well, all these people in the past, they were just ignorant, they didn't know stuff. They talk about medicine in the past, all the crazy stuff, like putting leeches on people because, well, they have bad blood and just need to get that blood out of there. Then proven after a while That's insane. No, that's crazy. If anything, they've killed more people. And from what I understand, the medical system still kills a lot of people. Who says where you are, whether you are on the top of knowledge or not? So perhaps there was something in the past, which I do believe strongly, individuals who use other means of understanding a person's balance and health. There are cultures that they want to look down on, somewhat indigenous cultures and so on and so forth. Well, they believe in bad spirits getting in a person, and that's why that person's sick. But they're translating that person's language into a language that will ultimately minimize their language. They may not be saying, oh, bad spirit, and bad demon. They may be saying, well, there's an attachment, and that attachment has a consciousness. I have experience with that. Actually, a lot of my work, and all those who are members, that work is very effective. I don't want to go, there's a demon. It has a consciousness. Whatever's in there, sometimes you have something in this area and it affects your ankle, from your shoulder to your ankle. There are times I go after things and they have tried to change their location on the body. So the pain was in the upper back. Now it's in the lower hip joint. Or they like injuries. Because the memory of the injury, a lot of times, your memory of the injury keeps it fresh, keeps it open for whatever wants to cause you discomfort. And like I said, everything is about feeding. It's about essence, about getting your energy. You may say, well, energy, here in the Matrix, what's important to most people? Money. What's important to those on the other side? Energy. They don't need money. So that's for the dopes who are running around on the planet. These dopes, yeah. And then they think that's going to make them happy, make them well. There's a lot of dead billionaires have gone by. A lot of dead millionaires have gone by. That money didn't keep them alive, didn't buy them eternity. Density, they have longer lifespans because they're not rocking a dense entity avatar. To them, your energy keeps them alive, keeps them from ending up in what I call the black ooze fields. Just like the system here. They do the work, they go and they torment the essence out of you, and then they pay it up the ladder till it gets to the top guy, who's no longer there, by the way. Just like the mob or something, You do this for me, you get a little scratch. I give you a little something to do this for. But you better bring me the lion's share. The price of doing business. So I'm going to actually ask to repeat that question, if you can remember.
The tie,
About the tides.
right?
So I went all the way from knowing the tides all the way to, well, anyone who's watched my forums, they know that's how it works with me. So in other words, that's having to do with, let's say, moon affecting tides. As I've said before, I'm not the whole concept of the moon being a sort of like a satellite and not natural thing in the universe. And that's not, I didn't come up with that. That is something that has been talked about more than a few times. And there's even legends about it with certain cultures. For instance, like the Zulu culture that talks about the great egg. I was going to give a little bit more information about it, and I figured I was going to research a little bit more so I can get my story straight. But I got three different versions of it, so I'm just going to basically go with just a short overview of the first time I heard that story about the moon being called the Great Egg, and it was about being put into orbit by some other entities. So with the Zulu, legend about the Great Egg, the moon, they were talking about these fish type men who were brothers who literally stole the moon from somewhere and then they rolled it into orbit around the planet. And they used the term for some of these individuals. They call them the Chitahulis. And from what I understand, the definition for Chitahulis, whether I'm right or wrong, has to do with where I got my source from. They were also considered to be reptilians. So they believe that the reptilians literally brought the moon into orbit around Dunia, Earth, Gaia, and therefore it changed things on Dunia. There are certain cultures who said that aren't even not from Africa, I believe, might be from South America, who claim to remember the night skies without a moon. So there's, even the Finnish people have their own legends having to do with moons. There's a lot of legends around about the moon. You might find it interesting to look them up. Some of them are basically just fable type stuff that really doesn't have any logic, to it. But and maybe some of those stories are just basically to diffuse those stories that are more truthful than not. So don't put that, in other words, the matrix, the system is not beyond throwing in a lie to diffuse the truth. So it's kind of like you look at these stories, you have to kind of, weed through them to see which one makes sense to you personally. And in reality, knowing it or not knowing it, I don't know if it won't really change your life, whether you know this information or don't know this information. The thing that changes your life is what's in front of you, where you're going, not even about where you came from. Later for that stuff, that's in the past. So coming from a family that was, were ne'er-do-wells or whatever, that has nothing to do with who you are now. And that's your mind is still back there. If you have a ne'er-do-well mind, you're going to have a hard time moving forward. But if you feel that, as I know, your consciousness has the capacity to expand because in its origins, in its original origins, i.e. the universe, bring consciousness, universe, home, the real, consciousness, its nature is to expand, is to grow, is to explore. Can be as curious as you want to be. Sometimes, from what I understand, they can chill for, however long, because time doesn't exist there. So if they want to just chill for a certain, a while, which may be, 1,000 years on the earth or something like that, no big deal. Because no one gets old. You don't have any time constraints. You don't have a schedule to meet. And so when you're tired of, or not so much tired, when you decide, oh, okay, this chill thing was pretty cool for a while. Well, let me see what else is out there. Then you can go on out there and experience something else. No one's saying you got to go to this college or, or whatever, this trade school or whatever, to learn the skills to get from this level to the next level. Like in the Matrix, it's like getting from the lower levels of a mound of turd to the top level of a mound of turd. Literally. There's so much more out there that's way more beautiful than this. That is way supportive of you as a consciousness. If you get a chance to glimpse home, which most of you won't, you'll understand what I'm saying. I've taken some of my members on that journey. Mind blowing. Many didn't want to come back. But since there is no time in the real, you leave this, you connect properly, you go home, you won't feel like I wasted a whole lot of time in the matrix. It'll be just a minor footnote in your existence that goes on possibly forever. So anyway, with that, I'm going to move to the next question. Okay, spin that wheel. Okay.
Question 6.
Question number 6. Who has that?
I do, Chief. It's another moon question. It's is the moon like an artificial CCTV?
Ah, yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, in so many ways it is, but not in the way that people think it is, like an eyeball sitting there, a camera just, scanning. It connects in a very different way. So, from what I understand, as far as with my, research and my research is not like scientists sitting there with with their little laptop, trying to figure out equations, whatever. This is information that I get, information that I suss, and I don't just immediately throw information out there as soon as I get information. I wait a good while. I wait years before I share things because I have to see more. I have to sense more. And then I put together the things from the universe, from the real, because there's such thing as what some of my posts call true logic. There's true logic, and then there is matrix logic, which is not logic. So, what I understand that the moon has had a lot to do with the consciousness of people. What happens to what fragments of higher consciousness you still have in you. So if you're walking around, breathing, doing things here, you have some amount of higher consciousness inside of your avatar because they use it as a battery. So once it's drained of all its essence, then your consciousness ends up in the black ooze field. And all the attachments that are on your body, they're also fragments of consciousness too. They're just on various stages of it. Now, those who can do the most horrific things, their higher consciousness has very little energy left in it. Disney likes those kinds of people. There's one walking lockstep, whatever the system tells them they believe. They'll even, be appalled if anyone goes against the system. You find a lot of them say, well, I believe in science, and science says. So, how many scientists do you really know? It's like someone told me, well, the apostles wrote the Bible. I said, have you personally met the apostles? No. Okay. But you said these men, apostles are men, right? Yeah, men. Yeah, men. They wrote, I said, but also men lie, don't they? Yeah, where are you getting at? You're trying to corner me, aren't you? You're damn straight in cornering you. Give me some logic. How do you know that this scientist was part of the system that lies its butt off is telling you the truth? And there have been numerous examples over the decades I've been around where the system will pay certain people to give false information to the public. They like it if your higher consciousness is like this, like a little sliver. They get the most use out of it. It gets you to do all the ugly stuff. People who do all the ugly stuff, people who relish in harming other consciousness, sliver of higher consciousness. You're almost black ooze. You're doing density's work, but you know what? Density doesn't care about you. Very good, Joe. Give us some more. And just say, oh, really? Pat me on my back. I feel really good. I'm gonna go some more. Then, oh, Joe ran out of juice. Kick him into the black ooze field. Next. This is where you live. Desire to expand your mind. Desire to expand your consciousness. And none of this fake new age crap. Because fortunately, I've been around long enough to have seen it come and go in many different ways. So now we got a bunch of younger people going, yes, and love and peace, and this and that, my crystals and everything. This is new. Yeah, young people are like, oh, this is new. If you really did your research, you'll find that shit was going on back in the 1950s, the late 1800s. It's not new. New Age will not help you. Know what it is. You don't have to not know what it is. I know when people are really damaged by it, they start to imagine that they're doing better. Those are the ones who will walk up and some of them, women do little fairy dances. I feel beauty. And you're like, I'm not into that shit. These people are crazy. Yeah, it can drive you crazy because it doesn't work and you so badly want it to work. You so badly want to believe that all you need is love. Still, nobody has ever really defined love to me in a way that makes any sense yet. But sure as heck like to sell it. And you know who likes to sell it? The system. You're suspicious of the system, but there's a program in you that will receive and eat what they're feeding you. I don't believe in the government. But if they said, boy, you're going to die if you don't do this, oh my goodness. Guess what? Guess what? The way that things are in the Matrix is that your avatar's going to die anyway. They said, well, certain things are impossible. How do you know what's impossible or possible? And then before they introduced their program of airplanes, cars, and things like that, people are walking everywhere, riding animals, having to pull things or whatever. They said, well, someday we're going to be able to fly. Oh, that's impossible. Nobody can fly. But planes all over the place. So understand that you're constantly being manipulated. What I do for my members with containment, it literally is to pull the density out. And if they're containing properly, it will keep most of the density off of them. Now, you can do these exercises that I have, and I'm thinking of a special edition, a special video. I may do it this week. It may be posted next week, having to do with giving a bump. Now, all my members know what that is. They all like to show up for that bump because they feel it. And the bump pushes my energy into your avatar and starts to raise the frequency of your energy. None of my members get sick. I do recall someone claimed that they were supposedly, studying under me, but they got sick anyway. You know why they got sick? Because they weren't doing what I told them to do. You know why they weren't doing what I told them to do? Because they listened to the density in their minds. Every member that I have, I've had to battle the density in their minds. And when they survive it, they stick around because, whoa, this stuff works. So, yes, the system doesn't want you to understand frequency, how to manipulate your own energy. The only thing you need to control is yourself. Controlling others is like banging your head up against a wall because you will never fully be able to control another consciousness. And if you're trying to control another person, you have to get past their attachments to control them. And you think their attachments aren't going to, battle yours? Some people try to control people, and guess what? They end up being controlled. But even then, they can control you for a while until you just get so fed up that you try to find some way out of it. The only person you should be trying to control, again, is yourself. Later with controlling everybody else. If you can control yourself, you can understand what I teach about frequency, about the mind, different and not the brain, but the mind. You can ward off the things that want to do you damage. And you can attract the things that will be supportive of your journey. They're not talking about journeys like, I want to buy a lot of expensive stuff. Look, you do it right, yeah, you can buy that stuff. But you won't see it as your only reason for being, and you won't go for it because you're trying to impress others. And yeah, some people are, I don't, fine. If you don't like what I'm saying, that's probably your density talking anyway. You think I'm bothered by it? I eat density for lunch. I used to get trolls. I don't get any trolls anymore because I have support that you can't even see. Open your minds. Understand if something's telling you, you start to feel something working, and something tells you, oh, be afraid. That's the density. Put them off for a while. So, let me try a little bit longer. No, don't try a little longer. I'm going to bring your mom in, and she's going to tell you to stop doing that. Because everybody's full of density. My members have less density. The more sessions they have, the less density they have. I have the number of members who empath now. Because I knocked down the walls that prevented them from tapping into that energy. You can call it psychic energy, psychic ability. That's just another word that the system gives for something that is universal, that is yours by nature. Everyone has the capacity to do it, but not everybody can. Some people do it empathing, but they do it in a way where density controls it. So they're empathing, and then they're allowing somebody to walk into them. Bad idea. Because they get used to walking in and out of you like a, freaking supermarket or whatever. What's to keep them from deciding, I think I'm just going to stay in here. Period. There are things that come in and they suss out your attachments to see how strong they are. Yes, I feel energies and I can empath all these, and they tell me this, that, and the other. 9 times out of 10, they're not telling you anything worth anything. But they can tell you something about somebody's life. And you say, oh, wow, I'm really, to density, your lives are boring. They play with you. People who feel like they have, have bad luck. Sometimes it's somebody really messing with you using density on the other side. A lot of the witchcraft stuff, some consider themselves sorcerers and whatnot. They use that. But they have to make deals with that thing or those on the other side who say, yeah, we know how to manipulate energy and so on and so forth. Yeah, we do this for you for a price. Yeah, you can walk around and with your chest puffed out and look at me, all you other humans. I am special. This is standing on the side laughing at you. And look at the ant trying to show off to all the other ants. And when they decide to take what they want from you, and they said, okay, I think we've done enough for you. They just snatch it right from you. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the next question. Turning the wheel.
It's me again, Chief.
Yes.
For question 5, I wanted to reword it from how I originally wrote it. Basically, I've noticed that the New Age people are speaking a lot about like this 3D, 5D split in consciousness, and then the religious people are talking about the rapture. I just wanted to
Mhm.
understand from your perspective what that's about. Because so the religious
Okay,
people are
but
calling it like Christ consciousness, and then the New
mhm.
Age people are saying the 3D to 5D split is a split in consciousness where I'm assuming like those who have reached Christ consciousness, the way they word it, are gonna be still amongst the people who are like in the 3D or whatever, but then the religious people are saying it's the rapture.
Yeah, I do know something about the concept of 3D and 5D. So 3D is supposedly the lower rungs of consciousness, where all the violence and all the troubles are, and so on. In other words, they pretty much what they look at in the world. They consider the world to be 3D, and they figure, okay, through whatever efforts that they make, they can move to 5D, which the number 5 higher up in a higher frequency. And the thing with the rapture, I think they're just confused because I've heard various theories about what the rapture is supposed to do. Some take them to something like a heaven, whether that's true or not. But I think, religion, is all up to interpretation. There can be people of the same religion, but they have various ways of defining their belief. So I know that the rapture, that they're supposed to go somewhere kind of like a heaven or something like that and get raptured out of their clothing. So, you're walking around when rapture happens and you just see piles of clothes around, I guess, the people who succeeded in making in other words, you know, getting taken by the rapture. I think it's just something to just keep people hanging on and hoping. And hope is food to density. So if you're doing this and you're hoping, you're doing this and you're purging out essence to whoever wants to eat it. You know who introduced all that stuff? Density. like I said, I've been around a while, which is fortunate for me. Some people, you're getting old. I don't give a crap. I'm getting more mature. I'm getting better, getting more knowledgeable. Density doesn't like it. They do some things to your body so that you're not supposed to live longer because they don't want you to even go anywhere near understanding anything. They're paranoid. But in reality, they have it set up in such a way that nobody was going to get out of this anyway. Even if you got a little glimmer, a glimpse, but you're dealing with a system that's run by the paranoid. So anything, it's like people, anything you might do that might release you from another person's clutches is a threat to them. Just even like, finding a hobby, I like to learn how to draw. They're trying to do things for themselves. It threatens me. So the whole concept that, I think some of it had to do with the 3D. I think you were saying that they're talking about being able to be within. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying, but one of the what I had basically found out in researching it, that those on 5D can also be in the same realm with the 3D. Not sure if that's true, but I knew that there was a guy back in the 80s who was supposed to be talking to these aliens, Lemurians or something like that. These guys call themselves. And they were supposed to take him on the ship at some point, and he's busy running around doing all these talks. And of course, people hopeful and desperate, they're sitting there saying, "Yes, yes, they're going to come and they're going to save us." And they were supposed to take him on this ship and literally take him somewhere where away from all these 3D people. It wasn't using that term then, but that's literally what it is. Taking away from all these 3D people and all these other folks who agree, with their doctrine will be taken away also. So they even gave him a date, which they were going to come and get him. And they left him high and dry. Last time I saw this guy, he had just gotten off the street from being homeless because he had basically, put all of his hopes and everything into these guys coming and getting him. What happened? They just leached as much essence off of him as they could. And when they tapped him out, he's standing out in the field somewhere waiting for the ship to come. Who knows? They might have done a drive-by, waved at him, and so, like I said, the last video I saw of his, he just got off the road, off the streets from being homeless. He looked really, drugged, unshaven. He just looked a mess. But those years before, he was just very confident, and he's not the first one, and he's not the only one that they did that to. So all this stuff with the 3D, the rapture, and so on and so forth, it's all about what they can get you to believe in. And maybe what I do maybe have something to do with what I can get people to believe in, but I can deliver. I don't, proclaim that I'm going to take you to some place of the, field of lilies, and you're going to be dancing your happy little lives away for eternity or whatever. They give you the most outlandish ideas of escaping this misery. For instance, they make you miserable and then say that they'll save you from your misery. That's what's behind all of these raptures, all of these new age things, all of these, will 3D will take you out of this realm and leave it to all those really evil people. What makes you think you're not evil? People lie to themselves all the time. I've had more trouble with religious people than I've had with people who weren't religious. And people consider themselves to be atheists. The way they run their operation is like a religion. It's all given to you by the system. The And it's up to you to basically decipher things and not be afraid of looking at something that's different without embracing it because you're so desperate to get the hell out of it. They use people's desperation, excuse me, to trick them into accepting these things. Now I know about these things because I didn't mind looking at them and looking into it to see if it had some validity to me. But I realized after a while, I look at things in a different way for a reason. So with the fact that my eyes are supposedly, supposed to be blind, but I'm not really blind. I can lead you on a trip home because I can see home with these eyes. I see what you desire to see. And the longer I'm not seeing the matrix, sometimes the happier I feel. Because what I see with my consciousness is a lot more interesting and a lot more beautiful, really, to tell the truth. I'm not distracted by the factory eyes, as I call them, the human eyes, looking at this, looking at that, this. We talked about signage, symbols, everything around trying to bombard your mind through your eyes or bombard your mind through your ears. It allows me to look at it without the distraction. So it's not like, oh, he can't see, he's just seeing darkness. I don't see darkness. Sorry. I don't see darkness. My vision goes a lot of places. I actually see people at times. There are times I actually see what you consider to be ghosts when I'm out in public. Does it bother me? No, it doesn't bother me. And they don't really pay attention to me because they don't expect anyone to see them. I recently saw someone on the streets. We were out running around this last week. And I was in the airport in South Korea. I saw a little old woman, ghost. I can't see anything else, but I could see this little woman toddling in front of us, walking, minding her business. I said, that's a ghost. We were behind her for quite a while. And then we finally returned to go in another direction. That's the last I saw her. So there are more ways to see. And I know that some people go into meditation, trying to see things with their mind's eye and so on and so forth. I'm not going to knock you for trying to do meditation. But if you don't have an idea of where you want to go or what you're looking for, the density in you will grab you by your arm and lead you around in a circle inside of a box. Look at that. Isn't that expansive and mystical? Yeah. Because they have plenty of things that you haven't seen yet. So they can wow you with a few items that they have. But ask anyone who I've taken on a journey to see home what they saw. Okay. How are we doing for time?
It's 5:06, Shiv.
5:06. Okay. Now, I will continue with the other questions on the next forum. But I'll leave you with that for now. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chief.
Be well.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
Thank you,ค่ะ.
You're welcome. Bye.